السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم. Please recite durood and salam upon the best of creation. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin tibbil qulubi wa dawaiha wa afiyatil abdani wa shifaiha wa nuril absari wa diyaiha wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. I don't intend to sidetrack from the main subject that has been discussed for the past few weeks, or the past week, which is about masail and fiqhiyat, jurisprudence and understanding the day-to-day rulings which has been happening for the past week. I don't wish to sidetrack from that. So instead I will discuss in some detail, inshallah, regarding jurisprudence and the Hanafi school in particular, so that we have a wider context to the rulings of the Hanafi school in particular. Because what has been discussed is the masail of the Hanafi school with regards to tahara. That has been the ongoing discussion. But just to bring a wider context to our understanding of how these schools are formed, where these rulings even come from, all of these things is not in a person's mind. A person does not generally have this understanding. If I was to ask a person right now to tell me when Sayyidina Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, who is the Imam of jurisprudence, fiqhiyat that we follow, if I was to ask someone what was the year of his birth, it's unlikely that many people would be able to tell me the year of his birth. When was he born? It's very unlikely. And it's a very unfortunate thing, and sadly, because we have given up learning and education within our circles. It's not the case in other circles. But within our circles, because we have given up education and this higher level of learning, it's because of this that we suffer from this problem. And nowadays we have social media, where we have access to different ulama from different groups, and they belong to different sects, and they have a very strong following online, and they discuss different things. Many people are aware of what I am alluding towards, because they've probably seen it online themselves. When you go on YouTube and other places, you see all of these different speakers, different scholars. They're talking about different things. They talk about one school, they talk about the hadith, they talk about these things. They mention so many things that confuses the commoner, where he comes to us and he comes to the ulama and they object in certain way. They say that, why does the Hanafi school do X, Y, Z when the hadith in Bukhari Sharif says X, Y, Z? That means that the Hanafi school does not follow Bukhari Sharif. We see this online constantly with regards to this. And sadly, because we don't have a strong representation like this online, then these things, they go unchallenged, and it's left to a person's own opinion, and a person then sadly becomes misguided and begins to follow such people. So inshallah today the plan or the idea is that we can briefly look at these things and look at the context of what do these schools even mean. Where do they come from? What is the basis of these schools, especially and in particular the Hanafi school, because we from the subcontinent in particular, we follow the Hanafi school. So it's important for us to at least understand where the Hanafi school comes from. If today someone asked you that what it says this in Bukhari Sharif or in Muslim or in another Sahih collection of hadith, it says this, but you pray namaz like this. So if it says in the books of hadith X, Y, Z, then why do you pray namaz like this? So one particular example, which we'll discuss inshallah later day, is the rafa' yadayn, for example, lifting the hands. You might have seen the other madhabs, the Shawafi or the Malikis, for example, lifting the hands when they go into ruku, when they stand from ruku, they lift their hands. Okay, the Hanafis don't do this. Okay, there are some hadith in Bukhari Sharif that mention that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do that. But there are also different hadith that mention that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not do that. Okay, so each of the madhabs have taken a position based on the hadith. And there's a very particular reason why the Hanafi school did not adopt that position, because of another hadith that the Hanafi school relies on. Okay, so the madhabs have their basis There's certain people, they use the differences of the madhab to try and confuse the commoner by saying that you don't follow the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are following Abu Hanifa. You are not following the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like as if following Abu Hanifa is following someone other than the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So today we look at these objections and these fallacies that people bring and try to confuse the commoner. We try to look at all of these things so that we can have a general understanding at least of the school. So if someone does come to you, at least you know that this person is basically just saying things from his own opinion and he has no true understanding of the schools in particular and specifically the Hanafi school. So today we'll look at some of these things inshallah. So some parts of it, of the discussion might be a little bit technical because we're generally not used to, unfortunately, like I've already mentioned, within our circles we're not used to having technical or intricate discussions with regards to these things. But these things are intricate matters. They are matters of the religion that are intricate, that each person must understand so that he does not become confused by a person who brings something else to him. So it's important to understand the intricate matters of Islam. Sadly, within our circles, we always talk about fada'il and the merits and these things. We constantly, when it comes to the urs and these things, we always talk about the fada'il, the virtues of someone. Someone did this miracle, someone did that miracle. All these things are good and well, and they have their own time. But we don't generally talk about the intricacies, the details, the things, the technicalities that need to be discussed, which is what is confusing our youth who are going on social media and they're not understanding what any of these things mean because they don't have a foundation. So because they don't have this foundation, they are turning to people of different sects and they're becoming confused, sadly. So inshallah, even if some things are a little bit technical, I'll try to explain them to make them simpler or summarize them at the very least. So from the Quran, we start from the Quran. The Quran is the primary source of Islam. Every single person, every child knows that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. The word dhikr is used, and the ulama, when they interpret this, they say it means the people of ilm, the people of true learning. So ask the people of true learning when you do not know. So this verse of the Quran, it obliges a person, any person, whether that be a commoner who is not an alim, or whether that be an alim himself, that he must ask someone who is more learned than him in the religion when he does not know something. So this applies to even the ulama, it also applies to the commoner, a person who might not be an alim. It applies to him also that he must ask the ulama when he does not know something. So the Quran itself obliges a person to rely in authority that is more knowledgeable than him. The Quran obliges that. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. It's an order, an imperative, it's a command. And the ruling, the general ruling of a command in the Quran is that when there is a command in the Quran and there is no other indicating factors to indicate that this is simply mustahab or preferred, then it's considered to be an obligation. So Allah mentions it as an obligation. That it's an obligation. If you do not know something, then turn to the people of knowledge. This is an obligation. In another verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لِيَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ وَلِيُنْذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَحْذَرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse mentions that it's not for the believers, all of the believers, that they go forth to one place, and the context of this verse is to do with battle. That it's not for the believers that all of them go to battle all at once. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says instead what should happen is that a group of them from the people, a group of them, they should remain and stay. They should acquire knowledge, and when they have acquired knowledge, understanding of the deen, the words of the Quran are very specific. A person who studies the Quran and reads the Quran, sadly, which is something that we have forsaken within our community as well, within our society. But if a person studies the Quran, they will understand that every single word of the Quran is very specific. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a word in the Quran, it's very specific, it's there for a very particular reason. And the commentary, when the ulama, they comment on these words of the Quran, then they mention so many details with regards to just why this one word was chosen and why Allah did not choose another word, because it has a very specific reason for that. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَتَفَقَّهُ. يَتَفَقَّهُ means to gain a true and deep understanding of the religion. It doesn't just mean to have a cursory or superficial or an outside understanding of the religion. To understand the deep meanings of the religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions يَتَفَقَّهُ. So that some of them should stay and gain a deep understanding of the religion, and then they should warn those people when they return, meaning those people who go to battle and to go to other things, these people who stayed behind to learn. When those people return, then these people who had acquired ilm and a deep understanding of knowledge, they should teach those people. So what does this mean? That those people who did not have the knowledge, when they went to battle, they did not have knowledge, There are some people who acquired it. That means that those who come back, they are relying on the knowledge of those who acquired it. Meaning they are doing taqleed, they are imitating those or following those who have more knowledge than them. So these verses of the Quran are used by the ulama to explain how it is necessary and obligatory upon every single person to rely on authority of ilm. Just as we rely on authority with regards to if you have a medical problem and you have a doctor and the doctor has consultants, and there's all sorts of hierarchy that exists in the professional world. There's a hierarchy that exists because there's always someone who is more knowledgeable than the other. So there's a consultant who has a speciality in a specific area of the human body. So when the illness is related to that, then they will consult that person because he has the most knowledge with regards to that area. In the same way, the deen is such that we can't understand every aspect of the deen because we don't have the time to study the deen. We're working and we have all sorts of other commitments. We don't have the chance to be able to get the deep understanding of the religion. But then there are some people who spend 10, 15, 20 years of their life studying the deen, the ins and outs of the deen, the Quran, the Sunnah, and the jurisprudence, the rulings. All of these things, they spend their entire life studying it. These are called the ulama, the imams of this ummah. They spend their entire life in the pursuit of ilm. So it only makes sense that a person is obliged to follow those, because when you don't have the ilm, Allah says turn to those who do have ilm. So we have a hierarchy within Islam itself, that there are some people who have authority over us, and the people who have authority over us, one of them are the people of ilm. So those who have acquired knowledge. So it's very important to set this context, because some people, they try to undermine the madhabs. They try to say that we don't need a particular madhab or a school. You can follow the Quran and the Sunnah directly. Now, the irony of this statement is that these very people themselves who make these statements, they themselves rely on someone else or some other authority with regards to any aspect of the religion. For example, when they talk to you about masail and rulings, they will say to you, Akhi, you should follow the Quran and the Sunnah. So when you say to them, okay, show me from the Quran and Sunnah, they will show you an explanation of one of the contemporary scholars of the Wahhabiyya or the Salafiyya. They will show you that. I can guarantee you that much. I've seen all of these different videos and these circles when they comment on these things. We've seen it. When they have to comment on a particular ruling, when they write even a fatwa, even in Arabic, when they write a fatwa and answer, then at the bottom they comment. Instead of, they write the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, but then at the bottom what do they give? They give a reference, a summary. They say Bin Baz said this, one of the big shuyukh of Saudi Arabia who's departed from this world, who's died. They quote him at the bottom. They will say Bin Baz has said this with regards to this mas'ala. Okay, so they still quote him. When we quote the A'immah, the Fuqaha, the people of the past who were closest to the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they say, oh, you are following men. You are following men. You should follow the Quran and the Sunnah. But when they follow contemporary people who are 1400 years away from the Quran and the Sunnah, they think that is more acceptable than us following those people who are closest to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that time. This is the irony in their statement. So the Ummah has agreed for centuries. This is something that even they cannot deny, and they have to acknowledge this, and they do acknowledge it. That the Ummah has agreed since the beginning, from the time of the companions of the Allahu anhum till today, the Ummah has agreed to follow higher authority. Okay, the companions themselves, not all of the companions of the Allahu anhum were Ahlul Fatwa. When we look at the seerah of the companions of the Allahu anhum and the ulama, when they comment on the lives of the companions, they say that there were a select few companions who were from the Mujtahideen, they were from the Ahlul Fatwa. They were from those people who had acquired so much ilm from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they were allowed and authorized by the other companions themselves, because they would rely on them to give a ruling regarding a particular matter. When a particular matter arose and they didn't know the answer to this question, they would turn to these few companions and they would relate to them the hadith of the Messenger and say that this is what we have extracted from this hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were a few of them, and the ulama have written there are around 20 Sahaba. From among the hundreds of thousands of Sahaba, the 20 of them were Mujtahideen Imams. They were of the highest caliber of learning and understanding of the religion, that the other companions themselves relied on these companions. So even from the time of the companions of the Allahu Anhu, it was not the case that they would say, I am a companion of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, therefore I have the right to also issue a ruling on this matter. No, they would turn to authority within the companions themselves, who were more learned, who had more ilm, who had understanding of the hadith and the life of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would turn to those types of companions and they would consult with them with regards to any matter of the religion. So from the very beginning, from the time of the Sahaba, this concept of authority has existed, that the companions themselves would turn to those of higher learning. Okay, then as the generations progressed, and as ilm became more codified, and the ulama did more research, okay, with regards to the hadith and the Quranic verses and all of the different ahkam related to day-to-day life, as the generations progressed, then the certain ulama, certain mujtahideen imams, okay, their madhab or their school began to form. Okay, they began to have a codified structure as the generations went on. And as generation went on, what happened was most of the other schools, because there were more than 4 mujtahideen. Today we have 4 mujtahideen that we know about, the 4 imams. Yes, we know the 4 imams. Imam Abu Hanifa, okay, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. We know these are the 4 main mujtahid imams. Okay, these are the 4 main mujtahid imams whose schools have survived the passage of time. The other mujtahid imams that existed within the time of the tabi'i, yani the time of the companions radiallahu anhum, these people, their school, these ulama, their schools did not survive. Meaning they in their time were also researching, but their schools did not survive. Only these 4 schools, they survive to this day, meaning ulama continue to do research on these schools themselves, and then this came to us today. So only 4 schools remained with the passage of time. So during that time, as time continued to progress, if you analyze all of the generations, you will find that even the biggest of the biggest scholars, in every single generation, they followed one of these schools. You cannot give any exception to this rule, except a few of them that came and they went against this consensus. For example, you might hear the name of Ibn Taymiyyah, for example. He went against this consensus. Okay, but before him, and even after him, to this day, we have this consensus, and it exists, and nobody can refute it. Okay, you can ask anyone to refute this consensus, they will not be able to do so, because the biggest of the biggest imams, that even the Salafiyah, the Wahhabiyah quote, these biggest imams themselves were muqallid or followers of one of the madhabs. For example, they constantly say, this is Bukhari Sharif, he has this is Muslim Sharif, he has this Tirmidhi Sharif, he has this. Okay, they mention all of the books of hadith, but Imam Bukhari himself was a muqallid of Imam al-Shafi'i. Okay, Imam Muslim was a muqallid of Imam al-Shafi'i. Okay, these people were muqallids of one of the madhabs. They did not go against the madhab. If you read Bukhari Sharif, those people who have studied Bukhari Sharif, you will notice that the chapter headings are in line with the Shafi'i school. Where the ulama have mentioned that the Imam Shafi'i particularly would intentionally form the titles to support the Shafi'i school and to refute the Hanafi school. Okay, he purposefully titles the chapters like this because he was a follower of the Shafi'i school. So it only makes sense that he would make the titles in support of the Shafi'i school. But the books that they bring themselves, that they tell everyone else, don't do taqleed of the A'immah, you don't need to follow them, follow the Quran and Sunnah. The very books that they are quoting to you and saying to you that this is the Quran and this is the Sunnah, this is the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, follow the Sunnah. These very books themselves were written and compiled by those people who these people refute. And yet, they tell you to follow these books. So this is the irony. It's very important to understand these things. Because if a person does not understand these things, what happens is that you become duped by these people. They make comments like this, and then the person is like, yeah, it's true. If it's in Bukhari, why don't we act upon it? Bukhari is the most authentic book of Allah, most authentic book in Islam after the Quran. That is how the ulama term the book. It is the most authentic book after the Quran. Okay, they mention this. So a person might say, if it's the most authentic book, then why don't we follow this most authentic book? Okay, so this confuses people. But Imam Bukhari himself was a muqallid of the Shafi'i madhab. So each generation you can see, in every single generation, name the biggest of the biggest ulama, and we will tell you which of the imams they followed. Okay, I'll give you some examples. For example, Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, we've already talked about them. Okay, that they were muqallids of the Shafi'i school. Later scholars that came, okay, very famous name, Imam Ghazali. Which school did he follow? Okay, he was a muqallid, a follower of the Shafi'i school. Okay, we know the name of Ghaus Azam, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani. Okay, he was mainly a muqallid of the Hanbali school. Okay, Imam al-Nawawi, Imam al-Suyuti, okay, Allama Ibn Hajar Asqalani. These are big names. Okay, these are names that are in the hadith literature that even the Salafiyah or the Wahhabiyah, they cannot rely on any works without the names of these people being mentioned. Because Imam Nawawi, Imam al-Suyuti, Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, these are big shuyukh, big scholars of hadith. Okay, you cannot talk about hadith without mentioning their names. Imam Nawawi, Imam Suyuti, all these people. Who did all of these people follow? Which madhab did they stick to their entire life? Okay, the madhab was the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i. They followed the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i. okay, they still followed one of the madhabs, okay, but nowadays these people, they still rely on these scholars, but they will say that following one of the madhabs is not acceptable, even though the authority that they cite every single time, for every single thing, yes, these people themselves followed one of the madhabs. So the irony is this, that they like to quote from the history and like to tell people not to do taqleed, whereas all of the A'immah, every single one of them without exception, followed one of the schools. This is something that there is no proof to the contrary. Okay, so this information is very important to learn, because we've had many people and they ask us these questions about the hadith and why a madhab might say one thing and why this hadith says one thing, because they don't understand the concept of the hadith literature. And that's what happens when you don't seek knowledge. These people try to dupe you, because it's very easy to do so. So when we look at, for example, the likes of Imam Suyuti, for example, he has written many things on hadith, but he has also written many things on the Shafi'i school. If you look at his books, he has many books on jurisprudence in line with the Shafi'i school, where he's written about the Shafi'i school. Imam al-Nawawi, Sharh Muhadhab of his very famous book about the Shafi'i school. Entirely, the whole madhab is about the Shafi'i school. Okay, so Imam Suyuti himself, which is a very interesting point, Imam Suyuti himself, in his time, he claimed to be a mujtahid. And he said, I am a person who has the right to extract directly from the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, he made this claim himself, Imam Suyuti, very big authority. His level of learning is undisputed. No one disputes the level of learning and level of understanding of the hadith of Imam Suyuti. But Imam Suyuti himself claimed to be a mujtahid. He said, I am a mujtahid, meaning I have the right to extract from the Quran and Sunnah myself. And he made this claim in this manner. But the ulama of his time, okay, in his time, the ulama themselves, they rejected his claim. They said that you don't have that level. They themselves rejected this claim of Imam Suyuti, despite his level of learning. Look at the level of learning that he had. Okay, the hadith literature, like I said, you cannot quote hadith literature without mentioning Imam Suyuti, rahimahullah. He had this level of understanding of the hadith and of jurisprudence of the Quran, yet the ulama said to him that he does not have the right to be a mujtahid, meaning to extract directly from the Quran and Sunnah, despite his level of learning. So where are we today? Sadly, we have people who simply read the translations of the Quran, read the translations of the hadith, okay, because we have online. If you go online, you can find the translation of the book of Bukhari, Muslim, all of them online, in English, in Urdu, whatever language you want, you can find the translation. They then go through these hadith, and then they think that they are at a level where they can extract from the hadith. They don't even know the Arabic language. The very initial stage of even learning the deen and having some proficiency in the deen is to know the Arabic language. Okay, the person does not even know the Arabic language, yet he thinks he can go into the hadith, thinks he can go into the Quran and analyze these things and try to come out with positions, and he thinks that he can understand these hadith, he can understand the Quran better than those A'immah who are in the closest generation to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the delusion that shaitan puts in the mind of a person. Okay, these people, it reminds me of an incident that someone narrated, that a particular person was praying namaz and he was moving, rocking in namaz, side to side. And someone asked him that, why are you rocking in namaz? You're shaking. You're not supposed to shake in namaz, you're supposed to stand still. This person said, do you not know the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So this person was confused, said, which hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So this person pulled out a collection of hadith, which was translated into Urdu. Okay, and in the Urdu translation, it said, he read the translation out, and he said to him that in this it says, namaz hilke padna. It says in this hadith in the translation. So this person said that if this is what it means, then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us to pray namaz in a rocking manner. So this is correct. So this person said to him that you are so ignorant that you don't even understand the translation of the hadith. You can't even read the basic Urdu translation of the hadith. That this hadith is saying namaz halki padna. Okay, pray namaz lightly. Okay, meaning don't overextend in your salah. Pray namaz lightly. This person misunderstood the Urdu itself and said hilke, so he was rocking in namaz. So this is the level that we have. These people will read the translation of the hadith. They see one word. Okay, now Arabic is a very, very, very broad language. Anyone who studied Arabic knows it's a very, very broad and vast language. Now one word, if you just move the harka from a zabar, fatha to a kasra, and you do this, it can change the meaning completely. Meaning have a different meaning completely. So if you translate something into English, the A'immah may have translated that thing in a different manner. There are different understandings and concepts behind it. That's why they say that the very first stage of becoming an alim and acquiring knowledge of the deen is to have proficiency in Arabic language. If you don't have proficiency in Arabic language, then how can you comment on the Quran and the Sunnah? You don't even know the language of the Quran and the Sunnah. You have to read translations. You can't rely on translations, because the translation itself is doing taqleed. Because if you follow a translation, you are following the translator's interpretation of the Arabic. So you are technically following the translator, you are not following the original. Okay, so sadly we have this issue within our society also. So our particular interest is the Hanafi school. Okay, the most focused on is the Hanafi school. You won't see that much objection or issues with regards to any of the other schools. Okay, but mainly the Hanafi school, you will see objections with regards to this. Many objections are leveled against the Hanafi school. Okay, by certain people who have this mindset, the Salafiyya, the Wahhabiyya, even though they themselves admit to some extent that they do taqleed of the Hanbali school. They even acknowledge that much, that they themselves at least do a little bit of taqleed of the Hanbali school. They accept that much. Okay, so when we say we do entire taqleed of the Hanafi school, then they have an issue with that. But with regards to the Hanafi school, it's the most discussed. They have the most objections with the Hanafi school. Why? What objections do they have? They say the Hanafi school is the least closest to the Sunnah. I mean, the least closest to the prophetic reports of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they say that the Hanbali school, for example, is the closest with regards to the prophetic narration. So today we look at just a brief context, whether this statement is true. Okay, is this statement true? I heard one particular Salafi young scholar, and he said that yes, Imam Azam was a great alim of great learning, but he lacked resources. Okay, this was his comment. That Imam Abu Hanifa, he lacked resources. What does he mean by resources? He means that he lacked the grounding for ilm. He lacked the hadith literature around him. All of these things, this was his comment. He lacked resources. So today we look at whether Imam Abu Hanifa actually lacked resources and whether he actually did not have access to the companions or did not have access to the hadith literature. We'll look at that because it's very important. If you understand this context, then at least if someone ever says this comment to you, then you can turn around to him and you can explain this to him, at the very least, if you know this much. Okay, so first, the Hanafi school itself. We know the Imam. Who is the Imam of the Hanafi school? Imam Abu Hanifa, Nu'man bin Thabit, that was his name. He was born in 80 Hijri. We are in currently 1444 Hijri. Imam Abu Hanifa was born in 80 Hijri. You know, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam departed from this world in 11 Hijri. Okay, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this world on 11th Hijri. Imam Abu Hanifa was born in 80 Hijri. Yes, just 69 years after the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just 69 years. Okay, after the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is the only Imam from among the four main mujtahid imams that is a tabi'i without a doubt. Okay, none of the other imams, Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Malik, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, none of them saw any of the companions. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, they say, Ibn Hajar Asqalani, he has written this, Imam Dhahbi rahimahullah ta'ala, when he documents the seerah of all of the different ai-imma, he writes within this, that Imam Abu Hanifa, certainly he saw Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu. Okay, he saw Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu passed away in 93 Hijri. Imam Abu Hanifa was born in 80 Hijri, which means that in the 13-year gap, when he was by the age of 13 years, before that, he had seen Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, and this is documented by all of the historians that comment on the life of Imam Abu Hanifa. So, based on this, Imam Abu Hanifa is certainly a tabi'i. Yani he is certainly from those people who had seen the companions. Now, some people object, they say that he was too young. He didn't seek hadith from the companions. Therefore, you can't call him from the tabi'i. This is going against the consensus of all of the muhaddithun. Because if you pick up the books of usul of the muhaddithun, they say that any person, just the same description with the Sahaba, any person who sees the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether he talks to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam or not, whether he converses with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam or not, whether he narrates a hadith from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam or not, as long as he lays eyes on the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam with iman, and he leaves this dunya with iman, this person is a sahabi. Okay, this person is a sahabi. There is no doubt with regards to that. In the same way, with regards to a tabi'i, a person who has seen a companion, the condition is mentioned that the only condition that is required is that a person sees a sahabi. Okay, whilst in the state of iman, sees a sahabi. Okay, and Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala radiyallahu an, he saw Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiyallahu an, irrespective of what age he was, irrespective of whether he narrated from him or not, based on the definition of the muhaddithun themselves, Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa, without a doubt, is a tabi'i. Okay, so he's the only tabi'i from among the major imams, the mujtahid imams. Yet he is the one regarding whom the Salafiyya object to the most. The one who is the tabi'i from all of the mujtahideen, they object to him the most. Okay, the one who had actually seen the companions with his own eyes. Okay, so this is very important to understand that he was from the Tabi'i. People object to this, they say he wasn't from the Tabi'i. There is ikhtilaf on this matter. Okay, none of the historians differ on this matter. They say that there is at least one agreement. If you disagree with regards to all of the other companions, you can't disagree with regards to Anas bin Malik. There are enough reports with regards to him seeing Anas bin Malik. So we say he definitely is a Tabi'i. So from the 4 mujtahids, the only Tabi'i. Okay, the only one to have seen the companions. None of the other mujtahids had seen any of the companions. Okay, so initially, Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah radiyallahu anhu, he was engrossed in trade and business. Okay, meaning at the early stage he wasn't occupied with seeking ilm. Okay, he was occupied with trade and business until eventually one of the people, the major scholars of Kufa, they saw his level of intellect and they persuaded him and encouraged him to sit in these circles of ilm to acquire ilm. So he sat in the circles of Hammad bin Abi Sulaiman. Okay, he sat in the circles of Hammad bin Abi Sulaiman to learn from Hammad bin Abi Sulaiman. And he joined the circle at the age of 22, they say, and he stayed in the circle of Hammad bin Abi Sulaiman until the Sheikh passed away. Hammad bin Abi Sulaiman passed away, and Imam Abu Hanifa took his position in the majlis at the age of 40 years old. Okay, so he continued to learn for that many years with Hammad bin Abi Sulaiman. So we need to now address this objection, that did the Imam lack resources? So Kufa itself, Baghdad, where Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa was born. Kufa, before the birth of Sayyidina Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh had already conquered this place, had already conquered the area that is today Iraq and Kufa and all of this area. He had already conquered it. When he had conquered it, in Kufa Muslims began to reside there. This was in the 17th Hijri. Muslims began to reside there, and Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, because it was in his time when he was conquered, he sent Sayyidina Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas. Okay, Sayyidina Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas from the Ashra Mubashira, from the companions, okay, from the Ashra Mubashira, those who are guaranteed Jannah by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In one majlis, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam went round the circle and he said Abu Bakr fil Jannah, Umar fil Jannah, like this, and he said Sa'ad fil Jannah. So Sayyidina Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, he was sent by Sayyidina Umar to Kufa. Okay, to teach and provide ilm to those people, those Muslims who were residing in Kufa. And then he also sent Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Now this is a very important name to remember. If you don't remember any of the names, then the only name that you need to remember at the very least is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Okay, because we'll discuss him inshallah. There's less time today, but inshallah tomorrow we'll discuss with regards to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and why he's so important and instrumental in the preaching of ilm in Kufa. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, he sent Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud also to Baghdad, to Iraq, to Kufa, to teach at that time. And they say that when Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud went, in the time of Sayyidina Umar, okay, in the era, in the caliphate of Sayyidina Umar, by the time the caliphate of Sayyidina Usman radiallahu anh was established, they said that within Kufa, yani within Iraq, within that area, there were 4,000 scholars that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud produced. 4,000 scholars that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud himself produced. Now let me ask you a question. What did Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud teach them? Okay, it's not going to be, he never taught them tib, medicine. Okay, he didn't teach them siyasa, politics. He did not teach them maths. What did he teach them? What do you think Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh taught those 4,000 ulama? What do you think he taught them? Do you think he taught them anything other than the Quran and the Sunnah? He taught them the Quran and Sunnah. With regards to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh, himself, he says that I have heard more than 70 chapters of the Quran directly and verbally from the mouth of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says this, and he says in the same hadith, again, just for certain people, this hadith is in Bukhari Sharif. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh says that I heard more than 70 chapters of the Quran directly from the mouth of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And not just that, I am the most knowledgeable with regards to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I am the most knowledgeable with regards to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from among the companions, even though I am not the best among them, but I am the most knowledgeable with regards to the Quran. This is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He shifted to Kufa, okay, and he was producing scholars upon scholars. They say 4,000 scholars by the time Sayyidina Usman radiallahu anh, he came into power. Sayyidina Usman radiallahu, before he came to us, 4,000 scholars were there. What do you think they were doing? Okay, do you think they were teaching other sciences? They were teaching the Quran and the Sunnah. They were teaching the Hadith, because one of the main objections they say that Abu Hanifa did not have access to Hadith. Because the companions were in Medina, they were in Mecca, they were in Ash-Sham, okay? They were not in Kufa. This is a lie This objection is not true. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll discuss how many companions and how many senior companions of the Allah shifted to Kufa, and how Kufa became the center of Islam in the caliphate of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. When he shifted the caliphate, when he became the caliph, he shifted the caliphate from Madinatul Munawwara to Kufa. Okay, so imagine if the citadel of Islam, the Amirul Mu'mineen himself, shifts the entire capital of the Muslim center and he shifts it to Kufa. What do you think will happen with regards to the spreading of ilm in a place like that, where there are thousands of companions who have moved and migrated there? Inshallah, we'll discuss these things tomorrow and address these objections. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon what has been said. Assalamu alaikum.